So something I haven't done in a couple of years is talk about video games. Like, really sit down and talk about them. And I got thinking about it. I gotta go over this entire shelf. Like, all of it. And because I have to do that, and I have to figure out what stays and what goes, what better chance to do so, also build some content, and get some different kind of content out on the channels. Let's talk video games. Let's go over the entire PlayStation 1 collection. And we're going to start with this. This is Battle Arena Toshinden 3. I believe this is Toshinden. I believe that's the way you say that. This is part 3. Guys, I don't have a whole lot to say about this game other than I have it. Realistically, I used to have this joke that whenever people would come over, if you wanted to hang out, I had to know if you could handle bad games. So I would put in Battle Arena Toshinden 2 and we would play it. Part 3, I honestly think still holds up pretty well. Part 1 and 2 are some testy material. I don't think they work that well, in all honesty. Now, there's some nostalgia attached to games in general. People love the games they grew up with. There's nothing wrong with that. I completely get it. In fact, I completely understand it. But if we're going to be serious here, if we're going to be realistic here, I don't believe that these games necessarily stood the test of time. Why keep them on my shelf? Because quite honestly, at this point, I don't see too much reason to get rid of them, even if I don't overly see too much reason to hold on to them. Because this game almost sits in a bit of a gray area for me, because it's both a game that I like and a game that I don't necessarily care about. Like, it's not the first thing that I'm going to pick up off the shelf and play, but it's also not something that I dislike at a level that I would get rid of it either. Battle Arena Toshinden 3. Let's follow that up with Battle Arena Toshinden. Here's the original. Here's the first. I can't remember how many of these I have, which is another reason I'm going all the way through my entire collection from the top of the shelf to the bottom of the shelf, because I want to know exactly what's sitting here and whether or not these items actually deserve to be here at all. And I will have a much larger video on YouTube talking about a collection problem I had with video games and why I had to kind of walk away. So, I do actually have the game. There it is. It's still in great condition, honestly, and I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. Only that I have it, and it falls into the exact same spectrum as the last one. I own it. I don't necessarily hate it. It is definitely not the first game that I would take off the shelf and play, so it sits in a weird gray area where I don't dislike it enough to get rid of it. I do feel like there are days when it will see gameplay, but I feel like those games are very far and few between, and so I guess what I'm saying is that realistically, this stays on the shelf. But these gray area games, they kind of stay on the shelf until I would get a different game and I would run out of shelf space. And at that point, this would be one of the first games to get rid of to make way for games that I know I will actually play. But Battle Arena Toshinden 1. So here's one I'm very much looking forward to in terms of remastery. And that is Suikoden. I believe that's the way this is said. This is Suikoden 1, or Suikoden. I'm not 100% sure as to which one of those pronunciations is right. I do actually have the game, and this is one of my favorite RPGs ever. I had part 1. A buddy of mine had part 2. I never got to play it. I never even got to watch it be played. That's real. My buddy played it. I never played it. I don't know how it plays or if it's good. I've heard great praise about it. And finally, after all these years, there is a remastery of both these games, 1 and 2, coming out pretty soon. And I don't look forward to too many games anymore. It is simply not a part of who I am the way that it used to be. Not that I still don't love games. I often prefer playing video games over watching television. That's just the way that it is. I say television. I haven't really watched commercialized television since I was like 15. That's true. Any show I wanted to see, I felt better just simply buying the DVDs and going through it at my own pace or streaming what I cared about. I pretty much, at 15 years old, I pretty much stopped watching everything that was televised on TV with commercials. I just stopped. But that led me to playing an awful lot of video games. And still to this day, I would rather sit down with an RPG and put 120 hours into an RPG than I would sit down and mindlessly watch a television show of any kind for 30-minute increments over and over and over again for 70-something episodes. It's just the way that I am. And this game is one of the things that makes me appreciate remasteries. I love it. Not that I wouldn't put this in right now and just play it anyways, but I actually love it when I see games like this from my past finally getting a chance to come back and influence people today with all the better looks, better graphics in a lot of cases, and quality of life features that will make this game even better than it already was. That's something that honestly thrills me. So Suikoden 1, however you say that. Soul of the Samurai. Yes, this is another one of those games. I honestly have it. There it is. Soul of the Samurai is a game that I bought because I remember, I think, what this game is. Yeah. So what I'm about to tell you could be wrong. Way wrong. Like, no, that's a different game kind of wrong. But I was walking in the store when I saw this game. And I said, Soul of the Samurai? That's one of those games that's not really all that good. But, like, I played it all the way through and I beat it. And it means something to me kind of good. My buddy says, like, what is it? And I said, basically, you're like a samurai. You come into this town or whatever. Zombies or demons or something of that nature, like Genma or something like that, kind of happen. I remember this kind of being like Onimusha before Onimusha. And I remember it not playing very well. And I remember it being very rough. And I remember being very mad all the time while I was playing it. But I muscled through this game, if this is the game that I'm remembering. And I beat it. So when I came across this game for $6, I bought it. My problem is that even today, after buying this, almost 2.5 to 3 years ago, I have yet to put this in the PlayStation and test it to see if it is the game that I remember. I told you, we're going to have to do a video talking about my collection problem. I had a real collection problem when it came to video games. So much so that I had to remove myself almost completely from the hobby because of crap like this. This might be something I want to play. This might be something I have zero interest whatsoever in. And I don't know which of those it is. But I own it. Does it stay on the shelf? Yes, I'm going to play it. That's part of what this whole project is to finally figure out everything, visual inventory of everything I own, put it back on the shelf, and flip everything sideways that I personally feel I've either never played, need to test, or if it's in question as to whether or not it stays at all. Soul of the Samurai. Silent Hill. Talk about a game that has relevance right now. Silent Hill blew me away. Resident Evil dealt with more visual horror. It was something that I could see and understand fully. Monsters and zombies were in the house. They were gonna get you. You had to figure out a way to survive. There were weapons. You could fight your way through. And oftentimes, I remember where they would talk about like, oh, you need to conserve ammo and everything in Resident Evil. Yes, kind of true. But I also always remember reaching a point in every Resident Evil when I had obtained enough ammo, enough guns, and enough time that every single thing that mattered on my path was dead, and I just had free roam of the house to run around, explore, pick up every item, do anything I wanted to do. I was never really scared in Resident Evil because I pretty much knew I was gonna make it. And the horror was a different kind of horror that I'd pretty much experienced my whole life. I knew zombies very well, and I wasn't that concerned with it. The light is coming into that window pretty hard all of a sudden during this one. And so it didn't bother me. Silent Hill, however, was different. Silent Hill gave you the big 3D city. It shrouded it in fog. There were times there were no music. You could barely fight. You weren't like a tough guy. You were just a guy. You didn't necessarily know how to use a gun. You weren't necessarily prepared for the situation. And the monsters that you faced were something straight out of a nightmare. Not like zombies or something that we've pretty much gotten used to. They have very much a movie and comic book following. This was straight out of a delusional nightmare. And the psychology, the dark foreboding atmosphere that followed every step of this game, like going to the school, seeing the bloody handprints. There's something incredibly unsettling, especially at the point in my life where I was, about roaming through a school at night that is completely abandoned, that seems old, decrepit, dangerous, and you know something happened there, and you don't know what. That is a feeling that stuck with me for years, and it just so happens there is a Silent Hill 2 remake on the way. And I'll be honest, it's kind of got me wondering about going back through the Silent Hill games. I mean, I have them. Silent Hill. Interestingly, staying on course, Resident Evil. This is the director's cut, so this was the version that I played the most. I had a friend who bought Resident Evil. His grandmother bought Resident Evil. His grandma was a straight-up gamer. And she bought pretty much any game that came out. She would pick up like a game almost every week. And she picked up Resident Evil. And we were blown away by it. I mean, it is hard to explain to somebody that wasn't there. But the atmosphere, there was something. I know people like to laugh about the voice acting and stuff now. And I get it. It borderlines on the ridiculous. It's straight up B horror movie acting, which is laughable. But I don't know what it was. But there was something about this game back then that it was unlike anything we'd played. I mean, I grew up with an Intellivision, moved to Nintendo, moved from Nintendo to Sega Genesis, from Sega Genesis to Super Nintendo, to the PlayStation 1. And I had yet to experience anything like this. This was frightening. And that is very hard to do on a system that old with graphics like that. But they did it. That moment, feeling helpless, walking into the hallway, seeing the zombie turn around, I didn't know. We didn't know exactly what we were getting into. Accidentally opening the door and having the dogs run in. Running down the hallway and having the dog smash through the window. I ran through the hallway. The dog smashed through the window. Oh my God! Fought the dog. We were playing this where you could play for a while, then you would save. When you would save, you would give the controller up, the next person would play. Now, they had the advantage of seeing what you had done, so they moved a little quicker than you did for the most part. And you would try to play like, I'm going to get the most playtime I can possibly get. I ain't going to save. But then, of course, you would screw up and you would die and you would lose your entire turn because now you're dead. And now you've lost all your progress, and you're going to have to do it again. And I get to continue and go from where I saw you go and know that I'm not going to die there. Well, because we were kids and we were playing it the way we were, I went through the hallway. The dog broke through the window. Oh my God! Then shot the dog. I was Jill. I played as Jill. My buddy played as Chris. My buddy ran through that hallway. The dog hit the window. We were like ready for it. Kind of got a little jump out of us, but it didn't break. Just cracked. Then we ran through that hallway about 2, 3, 4 more times. And then all of a sudden, one time when our guard was completely dropped, ran through that hallway, the dog came through the window. Ah! Guys, this was an experience in its time that simply cannot be replicated. The reason this gets the attention that it does and the reason it never leaves my shelf is because this was a literal life-defining moment in video games for an entire generation of people. I was part of that generation. I mowed lawns to get the money to buy this game for myself. And by the time I did it, I couldn't get Resident Evil. I ended up getting the director's cut, which was fine for me because it had extra things in it, like where you could play through arrangement mode and stuff like that. And I got good at this game, and I loved this game. And I still do to this day. Monster Rancher 2. Monster Rancher 2 was a pretty cool game when I was a kid. The gimmick of this game was one of the things that was real cool. Me and my buddy rented this game, and then we ended up buying it. And I would sit over at his house on the weekends, sometimes the weekdays, but the weekends were where we really had the time. We would put this game in, and we tested every single CD that we owned, every CD, every other game, every disc that we could put in, we put in to this game, because there was a system where you would put the disc in. It would say, hey, you want to create a monster from a disc? Yes, we do. Then it would say, open your stuff. You'd open the thing up. Then you'd put the thing in, close it. It would read that disc. You'd open it. You'd put this game back in. It would create a monster. How it did it, we didn't know. It was mesmerizing. It was like magic. But we got so addicted to it that we started taking notes. Like, we had a literal notebook where we were like, this CD gives you this monster, gives you this, gives you that. And we would laugh sometimes. We put in something like Rob Zombie, Hellbilly Deluxe, and then the next thing you know, like this little fuzzy bunny thing would appear from it, and we'd be like, you cannot be serious. Like, that was always goofy to us. We'd be like, that is what we get from this? That doesn't even make sense. But we didn't understand how it was creating these monsters. We just knew that this was like the thing. Like I said, it was like mesmerizing magic back then. Well, give it some time. I grew up. I did beat this game back then with him. Then I found this game and we bought it again. And we started playing it. Shortly after buying it, again, like finding it in a store and buying it, it came out on the Switch with like quality of life updates, like fast forwards and things like that. The whole game moves a little quicker and everything. Perfect. Absolutely. Because this game is very, very long, and it's made even longer by the slowness of the game. Put it in, start playing, we're ready, it's time. We start putting our time into this game again. And then we start figuring out that as adults, as kids it wasn't a problem. There is an incredible randomness to this game. Talk about RNG. And when you're a kid, it doesn't matter. It makes the experience exciting, and you have nothing but time to play these games. But when you're an old man, and you're trying to play these games, and you're not getting anywhere, and you know that you've got to take your guy, and you've got to do this thing, you've got to reach this date, and then you've got to go on this, like, you got to go out and you got to try to find this disc, and then the disc will allow you to be able to make a certain kind of monster and the certain kind, because the monsters that you can make, you're just not at a point where you're ever going to get them to the S tier, let alone the A tier. You're never going to do it. You don't have the time. The monsters die. The randomness of when the monsters die, you might have one of the best monsters, best chance you've ever been dealing with. It lives like 2 years, but then the same breed of monster will be awful, and for some reason you're just not getting the RNG on the rolls that you need to make that monster worth a thing, and then he lasts 5 years, and the randomness of it is nauseating. It's not good. And it made me kind of low-key hate the game as an older man. But my kid still plays this game off and on and thinks it's fantastic. So it's not going anywhere. But I don't have the patience for Monster Rancher 2 the way that I used to. I just don't. I've heard good thing after good thing after good thing about Fear Effect 1. I never got the chance to play it. I did, however, come across it in a store, and I bought it. And it did cost $7, $8 at the time. Wasn't terrible, but this is another one of those games that I bought and then never played. Ever. Like, never played it. You saw that. You saw it. Well, so I got this from, as you could tell, a Hollywood Video that went out of business. And then it ended up at a third-hand store. And then the third-hand store, I bought it from that store. And then they put it, because they no longer had the thing, they put it in one of these. And then this disc doesn't actually want to stay in this. So, like, I got disc 1 and disc 2 on this tray. And then I got disc 3 and disc 4 on this one in the back. But these pegs don't actually hold all 4 of these discs. This is a really bad case for this game. And that is another thing that I had to walk away from in my collection of video games. Is that sometimes I like, when it started, it was different. We'll talk about this more in depth when we get to the bigger video talking about my collection problem. But at first, it wasn't a big deal. I wouldn't buy the game unless it was complete. Then I got more lenient. I wanted to play the games, so I started buying games like this. But then, just like some other games that we've already talked about in this series, I started buying games that then I never played. And this is one of them. To this day, I still don't know if this is good. Maybe it's awesome. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's hyped because the time when it was played, it was good. And maybe somebody playing it now is not going to like it the same way. I have no idea what to expect, only that I have it, and that's all I know about it. Fear Effect. Here's a game I expect is going to make a lot of people mad real soon, because it's coming out real soon. These are complete. These are collector's editions of Lunar and Lunar 2. They are complete. These are, I'm not going to open up and show you or whatever, but they are complete and they are in terrific condition. And the reason I spent the money to get these complete and in this condition is because Lunar was one of my favorite games ever when I was growing up. It still is a game that I like a lot, to be fair. I most recently, probably about 2 years back, went through and played Lunar again. One of the things about Lunar that blows my mind is that on every system you played it on, it was different. I know that sounds weird. Like, what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about, like, when you play Lunar, okay, on the PlayStation, so you play it on PlayStation, so it's Lunar Silver Star Story complete. When you get to the boat, she goes with you. She doesn't go home. But there's another version where she goes home when you get to the boat, and it changes part of the story. And if you play the port of Part 1 on the Game Boy Advance, it is also different. You get certain characters at different points, and it tells the story just a little bit different, and the balancing is different on all versions. And so when they said, we're doing remasters of these games, I said, what version are they remastering? Because that makes a difference. And then, after I kind of got that locked down as to what version they're using, I remember saying to myself, are they going to rebalance these games? Or are these just straight up 1-1 remasters? If they're 1-1 remasters, there are a lot of people that are used to how games work today. And this is not an old man argument. It's not, back in my day, games were hard, and we actually had to beat our games. No, that's not the argument here. These games are old-style JRPGs. Like, no BS. They don't give you any help. You will level grind JRPGs. They are grind fests. The difficulty will spike randomly and unforgivingly. From the very start of the game, you will be level grinding. You'll walk out with you and your first guy, just you and your partner, going on an adventure, get about 3 fights in, oh crap, we are almost dead. And then you will walk back and forth and you will level grind, and you will level up. You will level up, you will get money, you will buy the best equipment, you will level up a little more, then you will move forward. I'm not saying it's bad design necessarily. This is the way games were. And so I'm very interested to see how these games are going to deal with a whole new generation of people that don't know what that's like necessarily. I think games, especially RPGs, have gotten a lot better about being balanced, and I actually prefer it that way. I don't have the time to play games like this the way that I used to. I don't need forever level grinding. I need to play through a story that I want to enjoy, see the story, deal with the strategy of the battles, and then move on with my life. In my opinion, RPGs at this point are unbalanced unless they work in this exact way. You should be able to go to the town, buy all the best gear, and then move to the next area. End of story. If you can't do that, if you buy all the new gear, start going to the next area, get about 4 fights in and encounter fights that you cannot do, they are pushing you back, you've got to go back and rest and come back out and do a couple fights and go back and rest and come. That's not balanced anymore. For me, that is not good game design anymore, which makes these games kind of relics that live inside of my nostalgia. But nostalgia's a real drug, because I will still play these, even feeling the way I do, because I like them that much, which definitely has me interested in this remaster, because I'm curious to know what the quality of life features are, and if they've done any rebalancing, and exactly what version they're going to use to tell the story. I love Lunar. I have them right here. And I am looking forward to those remasters. I guess we'll see how those go. The Legend of Legaia blew my mind when I was younger. Like, I didn't see this one coming. It is cool to see different systems in RPGs. And turn-based RPGs always have to walk a fine line. At what point does the battle become boring or tedious? This is difficult because it is very possible to have an absolute amazing story, but a slog of a battle system that has you trudging your way through the game with nothing to discover and nothing to really experience other than you hit that guy, he hit you, you hit that guy, he hit you, you're level 5, congratulations, fire spell, next fight, you use the fire spell, cool, that's cool looking, and you just repeat process. There are other games like Pokemon or Persona, which play the weakness card. So your best bet to power through every fight is to always know the element that you're about to use against the element you're about to fight. Sometimes this works very well. It's great. Sometimes you have battle systems where you have timed hits. Legend of Dragoon, or games like that. Super Mario Superstar Saga or whatever. That's another one that comes to mind where timing is important. Super Mario RPG. You can have a battle system like that. But this was unique. And it blew me away. It's almost like a fighting game RPG. You, in this game, have 3 different martial artists. And as you're playing, it'll come to be your turn, and it'll be like, hey, it's your turn. You'll hit fight, and then you'll put things in like light punch, heavy punch, or kick, or whatever. And you'll hit one of these corresponding buttons. It'll put it into a log, and as you level up, you can get higher combos and things like that. But say you do like left punch, right punch, or something like that, just to say. And then all of a sudden at the end of that, if you trigger it right, maybe you get like a super combo. Or like a cool fireball or something that ends it. And then that intrigues you. You immediately become interested in what all moves are there. So every fight becomes that much more intriguing. Okay, I've tried kick, kick, punch. I've tried kick, kick, kick. I've tried punch, punch, punch. I've tried kick, punch, kick. And then all of a sudden, you get some levels up. And it's like you can now use this much bar. And you're like, ooh. And then the whole thing starts over. So every level that increases the bar, increases the combo, increases the chances that you're going to be able to pull something off that's really cool. And you just want to discover more and more and more. So the fighting system is infinitely expanding as the story is infinitely expanding, which makes both principles stay very solid and feel new the whole game. You never feel like you're not moving towards something better, better, better. And by the time you get to a certain point, you're not just stronger because you hit fight. Your Final Fantasy guy ran up and said, whaka whaka, and then instead of doing 37, he did 672. No. This, you can see it visually that you are getting better all the time. It is really unique, really cool, and has earned a lifelong spot on the shelf because I love this game. Rampage 2. So, Rampage, I don't have big stories about this. I like it. I own it. I played it with my kid a lot. It was one of the very first easy, simple games that she, understood. Not that she understood it perfectly. I carried her through most of the game, as well as my wife played this game with her a lot, too. But it was simple. And sometimes that's all a game needs to be, is simple. And because this game still has a lot of play value even today, it ain't going anywhere. Parasite Eve. Parasite Eve was a game that, gave me a fear I didn't realize I had back then. Watching the beginning of the game and seeing people spontaneously combust, and then hearing that, that was a thing. That it was a thing. You could just become on fire. That didn't do me any favors. I remember being like, oh man, that was crazy. And then learning that, arguably it's a very real thing. And I was like, I could just become on fire? Why? How? When? Oh, nobody knows. Good luck. Hope you don't burn. And I'm like, what the crap? Guys, I love this game. I did. This game was almost exactly what I wanted at a time that I didn't realize that I wanted it. I mean, it was Resident Evil meets Final Fantasy. And it was one of those times that there was a turn-based RPG that had a very unique fighting system that kept you in the game. And we talked about this with, Legend of Legaia. These kinds of systems, I love turn-based combat. And sometimes that's all I want it to be. But sometimes I do want to play a game that's more of a turn-based game so I don't have to be 1,000% in it. I don't have to use all of my dying reflexes to skip and move and dodge and dash and do 50 hit combos, and I don't want to do that sometimes. Sometimes I want to push the button and I want the special magic thing to happen or whatever. And this game was kind of a very nice blend of the two ideas that like you dodged in real time because you could move around. And when you went to attack, it brought up like a grid type of thing around you as to how far you could actually attack with whatever gun you had and how many bullets you had. And then you could like customize the guns. And like, this game was fantastic. And honestly, a series that I'm kind of shocked just like died. I mean, you can claim it's not dead if you would like. But when was the last time Parasite Eve actually made waves? Like a modern, hey, by the way, Parasite Eve is coming back. Like, the last time I remember Parasite Eve getting like a lot of traction, like talk, like real talk, was for the PSP. Maybe I just don't keep up with it. But if I don't keep up with it, and I know about other new games that are coming out, like I didn't miss Final Fantasy or the fact that there's a new Dragon Quest coming. So like, see what I'm saying? This is a gaming franchise that I'm surprised did not go the distance. At least it doesn't feel like it did. Twisted Metal 2. Twisted Metal 2 is a continual reminder to me that I would tolerate way more crap when I was a kid than I will when I am an adult. I have heard this argument that games have gotten easier. Arguable. Truthfully arguable. Because sometimes I will tell you the reason Resident Evil 1, if you put the control scheme for Resident Evil 5 or 6 or even 4 into Resident Evil 1, no contest. You would wreck that game without even thinking about it. A case in point, when we played Metal Gear Solid and we played the Twin Snakes, I could beat the Twin Snakes as if I was speedrunning. Like, it's not even questionable. It's so easy. It's unreasonably simple. But it's harder on the PlayStation, the original game. But I think it's because you don't have all the same options. This game, however, almost reminds me of what it was like. Oh, you see me? See me filming? This game almost reminds me of what it was like to play, or what it's like to play something like Demon's Souls, Elden Ring. Like, these games, you will lose. Often. Like, you have a very tiny health bar in this. More, like, less than you would think, especially if you played the other Resident Evils. Your weapons do a lot more damage. You take a lot more damage. You can't just abuse the magic system. You shoot, like, one ice ball, and that's, like, you're almost out of mana. Like, so this game requires a lot more of you. And if you are playing the game in part 3, you can, like, go find a place to hide, and the computer will pretty much kill each other off, and then you can go kill the last 2 guys or whatever. It's not a problem. It's really not. Same with part 4. And in some cases, the same with, like, Twisted Metal Black. It's been a long time since I played head-on, so I won't make that reference. But this game, it's like they waited for you. Like, they gang up on you. They are pretty much programmed to come after you. And they will do so. And you will lose. And I think about how often, because I put this game back in not way too long ago and was playing it. And I can still beat it. But I have to, it's like a try-hard game. It's like a game where I can't take this gaming posture. This is my gaming posture for Twisted Metal 2. I am here. I am in it. I got the move forward. All right, son, let's teach you how to gaming posture for this game. This game is hard. But in terms of especially car combat, I don't think anything even comes close. Realistically, you can like what you want. I don't think anything even comes close to Twisted Metal. And I'm talking about the series. I don't personally think there was a Twisted Metal game that I disliked. Maybe I'm wrong. but certainly not one that I own. Every single one that I own is staying on the shelf because I love Twisted Metal. This is just part 2. I just talked about Twisted Metal, so let's knock out 2 Twisted Metal games. The original Twisted... I just did that, didn't I? It's because I mentioned Metal Gear Solid while talking about Twisted Metal, and then immediately when I was about to talk about Metal Gear Solid, for some reason I immediately referenced Twisted Metal, but Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid and VR. I loved these games. I mean, I can't explain enough how much I loved these games. Metal Gear Solid, to me, is one of my favorite ever franchises of all video game history. Of all video game history. And it's not even close. This was one of my absolute go-to games ever. Yes, this is the greatest hits. I had the original. I sold it. Because I bought the PlayStation 2 pack that had the first game, second game, and third game. And then went back and bought this again so that I would have it on PlayStation 1 on the shelf, which is its own irony because it's right there on the shelf. So I sold Metal Gear Solid 1 on PlayStation 1 to buy Metal Gear Solid 1 on PlayStation 2, but 1, because it's just the PlayStation 1. That's all it is. Just came in a PlayStation 2 cover. And then got antsy because I no longer had it on PlayStation 1, but I did, and then bought it again for PlayStation 1 so that it would be on the shelf as a PlayStation 1 game and a PlayStation 2 game. But it's not. The PlayStation 2 disc, the pack that they released, is just this disc in there. When I said that I had a real collection problem in terms of video games, this is what I meant. I had a real problem, and one that I had to teach myself to step away from. But going back to Metal Gear, Metal Gear was the first time that I felt like I was watching a film. That's cool. Extreme, cinematic experience from a video game. I fell in love with that concept. And I bought Metal Gear for one reason. I went to a buddy's house, and he was playing it, and I didn't know what it was. And he was all the way up to the point where he was about to encounter Liquid Snake, who was about to... They were going to be in the room, and he was going to lose the card, and then you have to go down and go to the different environments to make the card change to the different things so you can use the PAL key. He was at that part of the game, and I'm watching him play it. And I'm watching him sneak by guys and stuff like that, and I saw that whole little cutscene movie there, and I said, "What is this game you're playing?" He's like, "Oh, it's Metal Gear. It's so good, man." Well, I said, "Well, man, I gotta go. I can't actually stay too long. I gotta go." And he's like, "Oh, no, man, that's fine. That's cool. I'm just gonna be playing this anyway." Yep, that's cool. I left, went up the road, grabbed my lawnmower, serious, and then walked down the street, knowing that a couple of the lawns that I was going to mow, I was going to be mowing that Saturday, but I didn't have any lawns to mow, and I needed this game. So I just knocked on random doors and said, hey, I'm out mowing lawns, 20 bucks a lawn. I bought this game in 2 days. Because I found a couple of lawns, mowed, and then took a trip to the mall. Because I had to have this. It was that mind-blowing to me when I saw it being played, that I knew instantly this was going to be something that I was going to play a lot. And holy crap, was I not wrong. I beat this game on the highest possible challenges that I could do. I beat the whole game, never getting spotted once. Beat Metal Gear Solid 2 the same way, did it on the highest difficulty, collected every single dog tag. These games were a big deal to me. They will not be leaving the shelf. Argument to be made, this doesn't really need to be on the shelf, but I have it. I'm not going to part with it on nostalgic principle. But realistically, it's on the shelf twice. And it doesn't really need to be. You see what I mean by I had a real game collecting problem? Some would say, well, you don't. I have it on both systems because they're different. But, maybe. But to me, looking back on the collection rules that I have in place for myself today, it certainly feels like double dipping. And it kind of feels a little stupid. Makes me really admit that I had an honest collecting problem back then. And one that I will not be repeating. Soul Blade. Some of you know it. This is Soul Calibur. Yes. I found it. I found it as a greatest hits. I could not believe that I had found it. I certainly couldn't believe that I found it at only $5. And I bought it immediately, and it didn't work. I bought this game, brought it home, put it in, and it would not play. And I could not figure out why. There was nothing wrong with my system. It had to be the disc. Took it back, traded the disc in, got it again. Also, wouldn't play. Took it back, got rid of that one, came in, and bought it for a third time. And it did play. I don't know for sure about this, but I think I know what was going on. I don't think I was buying broken games. I think that it was this right here. See that? So, I think that I was buying the other version of the game. This is the NTSC. This will play on my PlayStation. If I'm not mistaken, there was another format. Is it PAL? I'm not going to claim to know. I'm not going to claim to be a super wizard here and have all the facts. I'm going to tell you that I think that's what was going on. Because I remember buying this game, looking at it and being like, whoa, I can see my reflection in the disc. It's a perfect disc. This one has to work. Put it in 12 times, could not figure it out. Would not work. I had to buy this game 3 times. And I think it was my fault. I honestly think I was buying the other version. Because I was just going to a third-hand store where a bunch of trade-ins had happened and the games were just on the shelf and I just pulled it out and was like, oh man, Soul Blade, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Took it home, put it in, nothing. Couldn't figure out why. Switched discs to a different game, perfect. Crap, what is going on? They must have disc rot or something. Took it in, traded it back, said, hey, I don't know why this will not work. I'm going to go get another one. Okay, that's fine, sir. I go buy the other one. Okay, great. Take it back. Try it. Will not work. Oh, what is going on? Finally, I go in for the third time. And this time I didn't ask. to like replace it or whatever. I figured this was getting ridiculous and they weren't going to play this game with me forever. I just went in and bought it a third time. Just straight money bought it again. This time it did work. So I have Soul Blade, which is really cool, especially for like younger gamers that like, you know, they kind of started in like Soul Blade. They kind of started in like Soul Calibur 4. Like that's where they started. If not, yeah, like 4. That's really where like they started, like my nephew. And then I'm like, have you played this yet though? That's cool. That's cool to be able to like introduce people that didn't know that one game series was something else that then became something else. That's always a really cool experience, and that's why it's never leaving the shelf. Aside from the fact that for its time, this was an honest to God good game. It still is, arguably. Need for Speed 3. This game was Hot Pursuit. I don't know what it was. A lot of people liked Gran Turismo. I did not. There was something about it. I keep getting my reflection in this because these discs are just so... But look, I didn't really care for Gran Turismo. I know some people like go, oh, what? I didn't. I honestly just did not like the games. They felt slow to me. And if I was going to race, what I wanted was the adrenaline factor of feeling like I was moving. And I didn't get that from Gran Turismo. I don't know what about it was, but everything felt very slow when I played it. Like, wah, wah. And then it'd be like, you're going like 130 miles an hour. And I'd be like, am I? Like, it just didn't do anything for me. This game felt fast. Hey, Lexi. You like Hot Pursuit? No? Yeah. This was my game. Need for Speed felt fast. And then adding the element like the police chases and stuff like that just took it up to the absolute next level. And it's an effect that has stuck with me forever. I need my racing games to feel fast. And when they don't, I just don't care. You can give me all the options you want in the world. But if I don't feel like I have that adrenaline feeling, that feeling of the wind, then I'm just not interested. And that's why you'll often see things like Need for Speed on my shelf before you'll see like racing simulators of what would be arguably higher caliber like Gran Turismo. A little while ago, I had a party at the house. Just hanging out, invited friends, had a party. And it turned into a game night where we went out into the garage, sat down, booted up the old consoles, and then I just started bringing out games. Everything I could grab that was 2 players. We came across these. Bushido Blade 1 and 2. And I put these games in. And a couple of people in the room definitely knew what they were. But there were a couple people in the room that had never seen these games before and did not know what these were. And then they got their chance to try it for the first time. They get ready, they pick their weapon, they pick their guy. They, of course, don't know exactly what's going on. They're just going to play the game. They start, the fight starts, I immediately go down, throw a blade, it hits them, cha! They die. And I remember looking at that moment where they're like, wait, what happened? Go to the next round. I run at them. I cut through them. Sha! Dead. And that's when the guy that was playing goes, wait, so like, this game is like if you get hit in a vital area, you're just dead, like a real fight? And I said, it's exactly what this game is. And we played like 50 rounds he was absolutely floored by it. He was like, this is awesome. Started playing, flipping the controllers back and forth, playing different ideas. I even tried to get him on this one trick. There's this thing where you do where if you hit select, your guy will like kneel down and like kill himself. Which I thought was funny because I'd tell people like your special move is select. It wasn't. And then on top of that, there was a moment where finally we were like, there's other characters you can get in the game, but they're kind of tough to unlock. What's the game like? Before I knew it, we were playing the game. We were playing all the way up to the stupid teleporting man, which is just the end bosses. The end bosses of Bushido Blade 2 they're not right. They're not right. They're not fair. They're not a skill test. They're cheap. They're old video game cheapness at its absolute finest. And I do not have the patience for it the way that I did when I was younger. So we did not unlock many characters. Because every time we got to the point where we're like, hey, we've got a real good run here. We've got 2 people that are about to be unlocked. We did a real good run. Then we get up to the guy and we just could not beat him. And that happened on like both guys too. Mr. Ting Chest and Mr. Teleport. Those are not fair fights. I love these games. I hate the bosses. But all I need is the base game to be able to put in on a game night to do some one-hit kill coolness. I love these games. They're not leaving the shelf. Everybody wants Mega Man Legends 3. I'm not blaming you. I have Mega Man Legends 2 here, right here. And these games, the Mega Man Legends series is aged. We'll call it that. This is an old 3D game, and it shows its age. But I would also argue it's aged in a good way and is a relic of a time that shows real potential. I don't ever feel like the games are trash, if you get what I'm saying. I feel the oldness when I play them now. Like, you get very used to the way that 3D games are so responsive nowadays. And then you play this, and Mega Man is like this awkward tank with a do-do-do, do-do-do. And the polygon count was real in these old games, but they had an art style that, believe it or not, has allowed it to survive the test of time. Because, like, if you're looking there, like, these games had a real art style that just worked. And even today, they still look presentable. It still looks solid. I would argue that for all these games that come out that are like collectors, like, hey, here's this collector's thing of games. It's 3 games in the series, or all 5 games in the series, or 6 games in the series. What is going on? Mega Man Legends 1, 2, and the Bontron game? Is there a reason? Capcom. This is a very simple upscale remastering. And I'm not even asking for anything like, hey, would you remaster it at like a high level and add quality of life features? No. I'm just saying take these 3 games that are hard to get, put them on a collection. You release the Mega Man collection. You release the Mega Man Zero X collection, the Mega Man X collection, the Battle Network collection. Are we forgetting something, Capcom? Because there's another piece of the puzzle here. And if you want to make it something even bigger, you could call it the Legendary Mega Man collection and include this and the other offshoot kind of oddities, like the Mega Man arcade fighting game, or soccer, and put it on there with it, or the kart racer. Like, I'm saying, I'm not sure why you haven't done it. People will buy it. At least I will. Chrono Cross. I've never played this game. This is once again a game that I had heard about. And so I bought it. I knew Chrono Trigger. I knew this was a thing. I bought it. You could say, hey, Bill, that's why we buy games. I mean, it's specifically the reason that we buy games. We hear about the game, then we want to play the game, so we buy the game. But that is where the collecting issue happens in video games. When I collect toys, I get the toy and I open it and I see it. And that's what I bought it to do. When I buy video games, I buy them to play them. And this game I have had for years. But other games keep coming out. So I keep buying them and playing other games. And never played this. I don't know what the title screen even looks like. I don't know a single bit of music. I don't know the battle system. I put off playing this game for so long that there's a remaster of it about to come out or already came out. And here's Chrono Cross, just sitting on the shelf, waiting for someday I might play it. Chrono Cross. Now, we already talked about Twisted Metal. We specifically talked about Twisted Metal 2. And I'd mentioned that Twisted Metal was one of my all-time favorite gaming series. Yes, car combat-wise, for sure. But, like, here's Twisted Metal 4. And say what you will, I liked this game. I liked that you could play as Rob Zombie. I liked that you could play as Callisto. I liked the fact that you could make your own cars in this. And I did. I made almost every single kind of car and combination that you could make. We had full tournaments in a group that I used to have called Gamers United, where we would get together and play. We had full tournaments with this game, playing as many players as we could, every single person create a car. Like, I loved that a lot of the characters that were like bosses in this game were old veteran cars that you could unlock. I liked the music in this game. When I wasn't playing it, I would take this game as a CD around to the places where I was going. I love Twisted Metal. And I know that some people think that 989 Studios acquiring the license was a point where the games dropped, where it just was not as good as you remember. And I could argue that I understand that. But everything considered, and maybe I was just at the right age at the right time, the swap of the studio did nothing for me but make me like the games more. And it's very possible that there's a heavy nostalgia tied in here. But like, I played part 2 and part 1, and I did enjoy them. But right around the time that 3 and 4 came out was the time that I had my own PlayStation in my own room with my own friends and my own multi-tap. And video games, first and foremost, are meant to be played. And the memories that we get from them are not necessarily about the gameplay, but the game being played. And for that alone, the Twisted Metal series will not leave my shelf. Tenchu 1 and Tenchu 2. I have both of them. They're both PlayStation version. I loved these games. I was already riding high on Metal Gear Solid when I discovered these games. And then discovering these games and being like, whoa, hold on a second. You're telling me that there's a Metal Gear Solid, but like in the past with ninjas? Is that what you've said to my face? At that point, man, I was sold. And I've played a lot of the Tenchu games. Not all of them. Not all of them. I do feel like they are inferior to Metal Gear Solid. Personal opinion. You could think whatever you want. But that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy them. And back in these early games, they were also kind of broken. And like, there was a trick to beating the entire game, which I literally used for the entire game, is you could throw the rice ball. The guy would come over to pick it up. Oh, what's this? And then like an idiot, he would just decide to eat it right off the ground. And as he goes to pick it up, you kill him, pick your rice ball back up, and throw it to the next guy. And you can just do this the whole game. Broken. But, that being said, what really set these games apart were the stealth kills. That was awesome. Seeing the different ways you could land perfect stealth kills that would give you the little animation cue from the back, from the side, sometimes as you came around a corner and got them before their little signal actually went off and they were like, oh! Or like when you jumped off of a roof and then landed on them. Oh man. These games were magnificent. And I wish they would have taken that stealth kill cue and added it into games like Metal Gear Solid, which they really never did. But that's fine. It does make these games unique, and I still enjoy playing them even to this day. Evil Zone. I actually did a full review on YouTube of Evil Zone, like an actual full review, like in review style, trying to be a lot more professional with my videos, because I liked Evil Zone enough to go through that, to go through the effort to actually put out a full review. See, Evil Zone I find to be unappreciated. I really do. Evil Zone is like, especially for its time, the ultimate anime fighting game. Like, it really is. And it plays off so many awesome cliches. Like, there's basically a Power Ranger or a Metal Warrior or something of that sort in this game. There's a little wizard boy. There's a girl with living armor, almost like a Guyver type of situation. There's a lady trapped in a different dimension that's like an evil sorceress type of goddess lady. There's a dude that's like... there's a girl that's basically like a Dragon Ball Z character. There's a crazy guy with a sword. There's a schoolgirl that like has a spirit warrior thing inside of her. And every single one of these characters that you pick has their own like full anime story thing that happens. And it's just really, 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 really cool. Like, I don't know what else to tell you about this. I will say the voice acting is like bad. But bad in like an old anime / old video games way that's actually kind of endearing. Like, you really do enjoy playing the game and listening to all of it. And the game is simple. It plays with the equivalent of a Nintendo controller, an AB. That's it. But the way that it plays and the way it handles the camera angles and how fast-paced it is, the fights are very... The control scheme is simple, but the mastery of what you're doing is infinitely complicated and awesome. It's one of those games, easy to pick up and play, very hard to master. And its simplicity is part of that. I'll take you out. I'll take you out. Let me finish this. And in fact, we have finished this. You want to go out, Lexi? Go outside? Bye, guys. Guys was a wild game. Guys, God Bless the Ring. It was almost like any other... So this is wild. First off, it starts like any other fighting game. 3D fighting game. Where you square up and you fight. But there's a weirdness to it. And it's a really cool weirdness, by the way. So, like, first off, if you hold a button, like I think it's like R1, you'll kind of go into like a fighting stance. And then you'll lock onto the person that you're fighting, and it fights a lot like a Tekken-style game. You have like the 3-hit combos and whatnot. You know, you hit the button 3 times, yada yada. It's very self-explanatory. But if you don't hold that button, it plays like an arcade fighter, like Power Stone or something of that nature. You have a special type of ability, and everybody has a different one. Anything from shooting a gun, to using a special sword, to shooting a fireball, or like literally using a yo-yo. But then it gets even more wild when you find out that the Final Fantasy VII characters are in this game. You get Cloud, Zack, Tifa, Sephiroth. Oh, and you get Red 13 as and his dad, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I've played all the way through this. I love this game. Oh, and of course I dropped it. But then it gets even more weird when you find out that this was a time when games like this had to do extra stuff, just like with Tekken 3. So, all of a sudden, this game wasn't enough, so they added games to this game. Like Beach Party, like Beach Party Racing, and, like, puzzle type of combat weird thing. I'm trying to remember. There was like a hit a giant ball or something like that. But then, if the minigames weren't enough, it gets even more weird when you find out that there's an entire dungeon-crawling RPG in this game. So, like, there's 2 characters in this game that are part of an RPG dungeon crawler, where you have to get weapons, manage your inventory, use magic, and so on and so forth, equip items, find stuff. Then there's like a hunger meter, so like you get hungry as you're in there, so you have to eat. You have to manage potion resources and things like that. You fight almost the same way that you do in the actual game, and you go down, 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 until finally you get to the very end of that game, and if you beat that game, you get the 2 characters from the dungeon crawler added to the game. There is so much going on here that it feels bizarre, but in a good way. This is a relic of fighting games past, and one that I kind of wish had gone the distance. Because if we could have seen an Guys release as Final Fantasy kept going, so like, this is a Squaresoft game. So it's not like they can't do it. It would have been cool to see this game develop over time to become what we see as Dissidia. I think it's possible that it could have happened naturally through updates and characters from every Final Fantasy as we went. It just so happens that it didn't work that way. And now with Dissidia being a thing and this being such a long-forgotten gem, I don't know that we will ever see this game in like a part 2. But it would be cool. The Legend of Dragoon. This game is crazy. I played and beat this game years ago with a buddy of mine, and then repeated that process with another buddy of mine, almost back to back. Like, I beat the game with one friend, then turned around and played the game again, almost like less than a year later with another friend, and beat it again. There's some standout stuff here. Like some stuff that I really wish we could see repeated. You know, I wouldn't mind a remaster. I wouldn't mind a part 2. During this, we've talked about like timing systems in RPGs, and this is one that had it in spades. And that might be its absolute draw to fame, but its magic system was also solid. The storyline is really cool. The universe that it creates is solid. And the magic Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Ronin Warriors types of what is it, Saint Seiya or whatever. Those kinds of aspects are also in this game, which is really cool. And you can't wait to see the next person you get on your team and what Dragoon they're going to get and what their special abilities are. And as you learn to fight with each character, that's also really cool. Because the fighting process is neat in general. Like, you run up and say you have a 4-hit combo. It's a timing thing, so the buttons go into a flash on the screen, and you have to hit the buttons at the right time. But it gets more complicated. Say your combo is square, square, triangle. Okay, that's fine. But you go square, square, and before the triangle, that guy that you're hitting attempts to hit you, so a circle comes onto the screen. You have to hit the circle to kind of negate his ability to counter you, and then move forward with your combo to hit them. So that complicates the system. You've got to constantly be watching. And then, on top of that, when they attack you, you need to be able to take care of yourself. If you throw like a bomb or something, because the inventory has grenades and stuff like that, you have to mash the button to do like fire damage and stuff like that. This game was one of the early times that we saw something like this, where a battle system was still turn-based, but kept you active through every single battle. The only negative part about that is, unlike a Final Fantasy game, where like in most of them you would get to a point where you could just like level grind, you could just kind of run in a circle and then like watch TV, and as you're running, you kind of get into a fight and you just kind of hold the button, and you beat all the guys, and then you go to the next area, and you beat all the guys, you go to the next area and beat all the guys. You can't do that with this. You have to be playing. If you want to level grind, you got to sit there and physically and attentively level grind. You could say that's a negative, but then I did also argue that the reason that we even want to own games is to play them on a personal level. So, like, this game keeps you playing. It's awesome. This is a legend game. And it does not leave the shelf. But not because of its status, but because even today, I still appreciate this game. And one could argue that maybe if they had remastered it or re-released it, maybe it wouldn't hold the status that it does. I don't know. Either way, it's not leaving the shelf. Final Fantasy Tactics. I don't like this game. I beat it with a buddy of mine. I don't like the way the game scales with you. I don't like the level grind effect of it. I don't like the way the magic works in it. I could never get into this game. I've tried over and over and over. I can't do it. Why is it on the shelf? Because I have not sold it. That's it. This project right now is to look over the games on the shelf and figure out whether or not they need to be here. Whether or not they actually deserve to be on that shelf. Will I ever play it again? I will not play this again. I own this because I had a collection problem. Like a collector's problem. It said Final Fantasy, so I had to own it. Because I was in a state of mind where I was like, you've got to own every single game. But that has changed drastically for me over the years. And this game is not going back on the shelf. I don't like it. I know that shocks some people. And you could say, well, maybe you just don't like tactics games. One of my all-time favorite games ever made in the history of ever is Shining Force 1 and 2. I like Tactics Ogre. I enjoyed Tactics Onimusha. I liked that Pokemon Tactics game. There's something about the way that this game works and that boss fight that I feel like it cheats you, where you walk in the room and you got to fight your brother or whatever, and you're on the staircase, and then if you beat him, and it doesn't matter. Maybe you guys are masters at the game. I am not. I've spent time level grinding and learning 100 different moves and everything, and walking in there thinking that I've got it figured out. And then depending on how you walk in there, depends on how his stuff is set up, you can't overpower him. And it's really hard. Really, really, really hard. It's a stopping point for me. I don't know why. And then when I do get past him, because I have beat the game, when you do get past him, I hate the idea that there's never a moment where I feel powerful. That's the only way I can explain it. You can get a random encounter on the world map where chocobos will show up and rock your entire party of level 50 people. What? I am not a huge fan of RPGs that scale with you. And I think the reason is because part of leveling up, to me, isn't just a strategy ploy, it's getting strong. I like things like in Dragon Quest, when I go back to a town where I couldn't afford a sword before or whatever, or I'm looking for something. When I go back and the enemies in that area that I had trouble with, now they have trouble with me. I love that feeling of getting stronger, getting more abilities, more ways to fight, better items, better inventory, better weapons, until finally you reach a point where you're like, the enemies can't even touch me. I never feel powerful in this game. I feel like I'm doing nothing but struggling the whole game. And maybe it's me. I don't know. But that's my game shelf. And this is not going back on it. Tekken 3. Tekken 3, I personally believe, was the turning point of the entirety of this series. I feel like Tekken became Tekken at Tekken 3. Yes, I'm not saying the first game was bad. I like the first game. I'm not saying the second game was bad. I like the second game. Both of those games are solid games. But man, every now and then a series hits that stride point where it becomes the game it is. Like, on a personal level, Persona 1 and 2, they're fine. But Persona 3, that's when it becomes Persona. And since then, Persona 3, Persona 4, Persona 5, these games are Persona. It is up to a standard and has created a system that makes sense moving forward, and you expect it from that point forward. Tekken 3 is where that happened in the Tekken series. I got nothing else to say here. This game was absolutely brilliant. And though I am not a Tekken fan necessarily, I don't play them all. I played 1, played 2, played 3, played some of 4, played a decent amount of 5, and then recently played the newest Tekken for a couple of hours. It's not really my fighting game. I tend to stick around Dead or Alive and Street Fighter. But that doesn't mean I don't appreciate something this masterclass. Star Ocean, the second story. There are plenty of ways to play this now. You could literally play it on the Switch right now. There is a remaster of it, and it's very solid. There are nostalgia goggle things that I could complain about, but realistically, I, not way too long ago, played through Part 1 and then started on Part 2. And I enjoyed it very, very much. And if you can't get it on your Switch, if that's not something you have, I got this on my PSP a long while back. I also believe that it's on the Marketplace in a couple of places. Like I think you can get it on the PlayStation Marketplace. What I'm telling you is that this is obtainable, and it is a fantastic game. It has some old RPG elements. You will spend some time level grinding. And if you don't know exactly what the game wants from you, you can walk yourself into a corner where you're going to have to put a couple of hours in to build up the skills that it specifically wants you to have at a certain point. But if you're into classic RPGs and you've yet to try this masterpiece, that's a mistake and a disservice. Get on it. Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3. So, 2, for the longest time, was my favorite Resident Evil. Absolute. Like, bar none, it was unbeatable. This game was unreasonable in terms of how much I held it up as a standard. But, also, I have argued many times with many people that like to say Resident Evil 4 changed the franchise and it became an action game. Did you not play this? Just because the controls weren't wonderful, just because they were tank controls, doesn't mean that the system had not already changed. In Resident Evil 1, you would sometimes pick your battles. You would run around enemies and things like that, leave them alone, and deal with the fact that you only had so many bullets. It was better to reach a bigger fight fully armed than it was to take the chances of ending your enemies. Not true here. In Resident Evil 2, you can see that we've already moved to the action format. It's already happened right here. It was already in place. You fight a giant crocodile in a sewer where you push over an explosive tank and it bites and you shoot the tank and it blows the head up. That's not an action scene to you? Can you recall something like that in Resident Evil 1? No, because the closest you could possibly come is when Barry comes in and, like, burns a plant. And even that is not even close to the level of action-oriented that existed. You run down a street of enemies. You pick up bullets everywhere. Both characters start with weapons specifically for killing off hordes of zombies. And I said hordes. Remember when you go into the police station, this is still at the very, very beginning of the game, you open a doorway and you enter this first hallway, and like 10 or 15 zombies, like a ridiculous amount of zombies, are all eating this one guy, and they all stand up and turn around and start coming at you. What do you do? What do you do in that moment? Now, I've played this game enough times to say what I do. I take the gun and go pop, 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 that one's dead. Pop, 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 that one's dead. Pop, pop, pop. Pop, 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 dead. Pop, 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 dead. And I kill every single one of them before a single one can reach me. And I am not afraid of running out of bullets. I will find more. Guaranteed, I will be fine. If in Resident Evil 1, you walked into that first hallway and 10 zombies got up off that guy and turned around and came at you when you had 14 bullets, no, it is not the same game. It was already happening. And in Resident Evil 3, they add dodging functions and time trials, revving up the action. They give you a guy with a machine gun right off the bat. You don't think that spells action already? We had already moved past the shock factor of the game being scary. It was done. We'd done scary already. Now, it was time to drive it home and play the action scenario. So in Resident Evil 2, they set the groundwork for it. And every single game got more action-oriented as we went from there. And I will argue that is the truth. I have a video on YouTube that specifically talks about how I prefer classic Laura and I miss her. Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider 2. Tomb Raider 3. Tomb Raider The Last Revelation. Tomb Raider Chronicles. I'm not just saying that I liked classic Tomb Raider. It's right here. I loved classic Tomb Raider. Even the games that were hard that I found that I couldn't beat, that I needed help to get through them, I didn't care. I loved this character. And yes, I mean that. There's something about her that I miss. I loved Lara Croft as she was. I don't hate new Laura, but I have my issues with her. And I really started to like Laura when we moved into the Legends material. This set a groundwork. Legends blew it over the top and had my complete attention. See, this set the foundation of a character that I was really intrigued by. I really liked female Indiana Jones pulp action hero. Then, all of a sudden, we get the comic book from Image Comics. Oh, that right there. And I was at the perfect time. I was already reading Witchblade. I was into things like Conan the Barbarian and stuff of that nature. I liked my heroes to have kind of an edge. It was the 90s, early 2000s. I liked this kind of stuff at that time for sure. And they released the Image comics. So I'm playing these games, I'm reading the Image comics, and then they release Legends, which felt like it took what was going on here and what was going on in the comics and then smushed them together and gave me my dream Laura. I love Tomb Raider. I love it. It's on the shelf. It ain't going anywhere. And before it's even asked, I have not yet played the remaster. I will. I just haven't done it yet. Twisted Metal 3 kicks off the beginning of 989 Studios being in charge of Twisted Metal. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I don't remember exactly how many games they had their hands in, but as I've already talked about, this was just at the perfect time for me. I'd played Part 1 and I'd played Part 2 and I enjoyed it. But by the time Part 3 came out, I had my own PlayStation, in my own bedroom, with my own friends, and my own multi-tap. And this game, we put time into this game. I mean, we had the system worked out. We knew what cars we could use and what tactics we could use between me and my friends, whether I was alone or with a buddy. We had the maps memorized. Like, we knew how to beat the computer and what to do. And we knew that when we played with the multi-tap and everything and everybody getting on the screen and playing, oh man, this was it. This is one of those games that I look back with very fond memories. I hear a lot of people talk about things like GoldenEye. Oh man, GoldenEye was my game, man. It wasn't my game. I didn't like GoldenEye. I didn't really care about James Bond. I didn't have an N64. But you want to know a game that I played multi-tap all the time? This was a 4-player game that got 4 players on the regular. It was Twisted Metal 3. And when I wasn't playing it, man, I was listening to it because the disc was a straight-up masterpiece as well. The disc itself was an absolute masterpiece. And it actually introduced me to things that I didn't even know existed, like Ghoul Spoon. So, like, this is something that never leaves the shelf. For a while there were a bunch of really cool 2D fighting games that were featuring Marvel superheroes. It was like an entire wave of them. And right here was one of the beginnings of it. This is X-Men Children of the Atom. And I remember this was at a time when Capcom simply made the best fighting games. I mean, they had Darkstalkers, they had Street Fighter, they had X-Men Children of the Atom, they had X-Men vs. Street Fighter, they had Marvel superheroes, they had Marvel vs. Capcom. Oh my gosh. Guys, to say that Capcom was at the top of their game may be an understatement. They were above expectations. At this time, this group, Capcom, would release a fighting game. You would just buy it. You just buy it. You didn't even need consideration. You weren't even like, I didn't really care for the last one, and I'm kind of watching this one to see where it goes. No, there was no consideration. Capcom said, hey, by the way, X-Men, and this time we put some Street Fighter in it. Oh, give it to me. I loved these games. Xenogears. Xenogears was something that was very unique. One, in an absolute fantastic fighting system, where just like other games that I've talked about, like Legend of Legaia, there was like a fighting system where you would like implant, hey, I want to punch, kick, or whatever. And then you would do special attacks depending on the combos that you created that would have nice finishers or like very specific special moves because of those combination inputs. But then I was also, at the time, just starting to really experience Gundam and kind of dig my teeth in and figure out exactly where I liked Gundam and what I liked about it. Then this game comes out. And this game was like, what if there was a Gundam RPG? And I mean, oh my, it was stuck there for a second. That was pretty much the gist of it. It gets way more complicated than that when you actually play the game. I'm not trying to simplify it like that. In fact, I would tell you that that's a disservice, because this game is genuinely intriguing and has a lot to say. Possibly to the point of sometimes the first time you play it, maybe you don't pick up on everything it's talking about, and maybe even sometimes after you've played it once or twice, you still go and like watch a video and be like, okay, I see it now. I get where they're drawing parallels and yada yada. It's really, really cool. It's a really good game. And from what I understand, it was supposed to be part of a way bigger project. This game was supposed to somehow be linked to Xenosaga, which I don't think actually ever came into realization. So it's kind of its own standalone thing. And I don't think it's ever been remastered or remade in any way. So this isn't easy to find or play for a lot of people either. But it's worth it. Now, I did simplify it, because this game came out at a time when I was into Gundam, I was into anime, I was into fighting games, I liked turn-based combat, but I wanted it to interest me and stay active. Perfect storm. Wild Arms is a game I have never played. Ever. I have it. I bought it. I honestly don't remember when I bought it, to the point where I have a feeling that this game was given to me. I think, when I'm stopping and I'm really putting it through the grinder here in my memories, I remember watching this be played. And I feel like, for people that keep up with Fandom Night, I feel like the Lone Paladin, specifically, I think he used to come over, and I think he played this. Now, I don't remember if I bought it and he played it, and because he played it, I just watched it and then never felt the need to have to go through it myself. That's very possible. Or if maybe this was his game, and for whatever reason, he played it, then it ended up at my house, and it never left. But I don't know which is the case anymore. I do know that I have personally never played it, but I've seen it all the way to the end. Does it deserve to go on the shelf? I don't know. I'm going to put it on the shelf. I'm going to keep it. Because this is another one of those games that before I can make an educated decision as to what I feel about it, I need to give it a serious try of my own hand. And I've never done it. Front Mission 3 is my favorite front mission they have ever made. And there is a remake just around the corner. Oh, I am thrilled about that. Like, I am thrilled about that. Absolutely. Like, I can't even begin to explain it. I liked part 1. Part 2, I have issues with. Even the remaster, I don't even necessarily love that. It's fine. It's fine. And that's really all I'm going to give it. I don't know why, but part 2 rubs me the wrong way. I don't know if it's a difficulty curve that's too extreme right off the bat that requires like massive like level grinding that I don't like. I don't know if it's the storyline that doesn't intrigue me the same way as the first one does, where the first one very much feels like Blue Destiny Gundam. And, like, I don't know. I really don't. I don't know. Part 3, though, hits that sweet spot. This is one of those games that I've talked about this before. At some point, games reach a point when they become what they're gonna be. Part 1 lays the groundwork. Part 2 walks it backwards, but walks it forwards. It sets a foundation for how the game should actually play, how it should be balanced, some of the tricks that we should be using, how certain moves and stuff like that work in terms of like getting abilities. Because in the first game, you want to know the trick to beat in the first game? I'm serious about this. Build every single guy in your team to use dual machine guns and dual shields. That's it. That's it. That's all you need. I'm not kidding. The machine guns in that game is unbalanced. In the first game, do that and just run forward with you cannot lose. It is incredible how unbalanced it is. And then in the second game, it's very jarring because it's way more balanced. It's way more about armor types and stuff like that you really got to learn and dig in. But I think the story kind of suffers and the characters just don't feel great to me. But this is perfect. They did away with the ammo system. They kept a lot of the actual strengths and weaknesses. The Wanzer building is, I think, to an absolute T. They'd figured it out by this point. And they focus on 2 very, very good stories. And for a long time, I didn't know how to pick the second story. Because you're asked to deliver Wanzers at the beginning of the game. And I just figured, like so many other RPGs that I'd played, that I didn't actually have a choice. That if I'd have said no, he would have just begged me until I said yes. So every time I said, yes, I'll deliver the Wanzers with you. And then I get drug into this big, long storyline. And I keep hearing there are 2 storylines. What? Where's the second? How do you get it? You say no. You say, no, I'm not delivering the Wanzers with you. That's your job. Do your job. And Destiny will take you down the other choice. I had no idea for years that that's how simple it was. See, when I was playing games like this, I didn't just have I didn't have immediate access to internet to tell me how to beat my game. And I also did not have video game magazines that guaranteedly referenced the game that I was specifically playing. So if I didn't know a thing, I just didn't know a thing. And my experience throughout the years of telling people no in RPGs was just that the game would loop you until you said yes, or you would say no, and you couldn't go any further. It would kind of take you out of the conversation. You'd roam around forever being like, what am I supposed to do? Oh, you have to go tell this guy yes. So every time he asked, I just said yes, and I could not figure out how to trigger the second frickin' storyline. I love this game. Battle Arena Toshinden 2. This is 2. This is the game that I always thought this was a bad 3D fighting game. I think the third one finally set it right and got it on course and made it a good fighting game. The first one is playable. The second one was the one I discovered first. I bought this on a whim out of nowhere because of the anime and started playing it and was like, this is awful. But then loved the Game Boy game of this. This game I used to drag out when people would come over, and I'd be like, play this game. And I can even remember one time that I sat somebody down to play this. They got about 4 fights in, and they said, some people should not code 3D. Look, you may have some nostalgia with this, but on a personal level, especially by today's standards, this is not a good fighting game. Is it going back on the shelf? Yes, because I have all the rest of the series, and it is an interesting thing to be able to put fighting games in, one after another, after another, after another, and see the progression or deprogression of any fighting game franchise and where the strengths and weaknesses lie on each single game going up or down a line. And that's the reason I keep this. Because as a full picture of Battle Arena Toshinden games, it's still a lot of fun. Here's one for you. Final Fantasy IX. I have tried multiple times to play this game. I have forced myself to beat this game one time. And I disliked the experience so much that I didn't know that I had beat the game. I'm not kidding. I didn't know. I'd completely put it out of my mind. I beat the game, I put it on the shelf, I forgot about it. Years later, we were having a discussion on Fandom Night about Final Fantasies. We were going every single game, and we were talking about them. We got to Final Fantasy IX. I got to talking to my buddy Proto Guy. I got talking to my buddy Proto Guy. And I told him, I don't think I've beat the game. He said, do you remember how far you got? And I said, yes, I do. I specifically remembered it. It's trapped up here for some reason. I said, you fight some guy. I don't remember if he had any major storyline or anything. I think he just like shows up. You fight him, and then there's this part where you're like running down a tree or something of that nature, and like Zidane is still a 3D character, but the rest of it is kind of like turned into like a CGI moment, and you're still kind of running, and you're like running down a tree, and he goes, you mean like the end of the game? And I was like, wait. He goes, do you remember anything after? And I said, something about you have to go back to the castle for Dagger or something like that, and then like she's in like a wedding dress or something. And he goes, dude, you beat the game. I disliked this game enough that when I finished playing it, I literally removed it from my memories. I did not like how you learned moves in this game. How you would have to hold on to weapons that you were long since done with because you had to fight something so you could get a bug killer, and then you had to get so much AP that maybe you could possibly put the bug killer on or whatever, and if you were working on one weapon, didn't matter if you had a better weapon for the situation that you were in. I didn't like necessarily the random encounters. I didn't like how like slow the game felt. It's hard to explain, but it felt slow to me, like weird. I didn't like the trance system that triggered automatically. I didn't like the graphics in terms of how everybody looked chibi and child. I didn't like the universe that it created, like the world. It seemed, how do I put this? It seemed too Mario. That's the only way I can explain it. Like, even like parts that you could argue are supposed to be like dark parts just don't feel like they have the weight that I need them to have. Like, you watch Dagger's mom die. I know the story. And like, I don't even care. Like, I don't even care. And it happened over and over and over again in this game. That like, I never felt like the gravity of the situation was there. And it could have been very much an aesthetic problem. I don't know. But I do know that I don't like this game. Does Final Fantasy IX go back on the shelf? Yes, but it only goes on the shelf because it has literally been there so long that it's almost pointless to remove it from the shelf now. At some point, I know that one of my friends, be it Lone Paladin, Proto Guy, somebody of that nature, will want to play this. And when that happens, we will probably sit down, hang out, talk, and I'm perfectly okay with being part of the game experience that I don't really have to play. And maybe, because I have a rule. I have a rule that people as adults should revisit things they did as kids. Because you may very well find that the situation has either altered, or the way you view it has altered, or you've grown into a different state of mind and appreciate things that you simply didn't have it in you at the time. Such as Batman 66. And I've wondered countless times that if I put this in now, would it hit different? I don't know. But it's going to stick around at least long enough for me to give it one last try. Diablo for the PlayStation. This was unheard of, man. This game is shockingly good. And the book is in sideways and I have no idea why. But this game was shockingly good. I had this game for the computer, for the PC. Then, I remember it came out on PlayStation, and it was 2 players. And I was kind of shocked by that, and I remember I bought it. Me and my buddy played it, and at the time, I can't remember why, I had this little knob TV, this old black and white knob TV. And this game is kind of crazy in black and white. Like, there was something about playing it on that old knob TV that was just wild. And I remember every time we played this, we would just save our characters, because saving the game took like more blocks, and we were worried about that. So we ended up getting to a point where our characters were like mega class. They were so powerful. And I think I liked this more than I liked the PC game at the time, because I'm not the kind of person that likes to break my game. I like to play the game. I like to experience what it was that I was meant to experience. Take it in, enjoy the story, listen to the voice acting, read the dialogue, really look at the cutscenes, enjoy the world, look at all that, look at the details that were put in, go through, experience it with the characters, feel that challenge, or the dread. But when you were playing on PC, and every single person Every single person had the godly plate of whales. You didn't find that. We know what you did. Like, we know what you did. Absolutely. Without question. There was time and time and time again that you'd walk in and find somebody on the computer that was like level 15, and they had basically cheated with duplication abilities to get max money, and then use that max money to have like all the spells they could possibly get at that point. And you didn't do that legit. You didn't do that legit. Some of you probably did, but it's a very small number. Cheating in Diablo 1 was par for the course. But this, we didn't know how to do that trick yet. We didn't know if you even could do that trick. Diablo 1 forced us to experience this game in real time the way it was meant to be played, and it was unforgiving. And I loved it. I loved the brutality of it, and how much time we put in, and the pride I had at leveling my guy up and obtaining the different spells and abilities in real time with legit dedication. That's the reason I loved this game. I tried to go back to this game with my buddy Lone Paladin. It's been a while. The game is hard. It's unforgivingly difficult. And on top of being unforgivingly difficult... Hey, Lexi. Hey. You see them? You see? No, you don't even care? On top of being unforgivingly difficult, right? There was another problem. Arrows, they don't go through your partner. And I wanted to play a rogue this time, like the Amazon girl. I may have murdered the Lone Paladin like 9 times. He kept walking in front of the arrows. Like, it's partially my fault too. But I still love this game a lot. And I'm honestly, I would love to go back through the entirety of this and beat it again. But putting the time in is a real chore now. At my adult current position in life. And I've still never even played 3 and never even turned on 4. So, like, you get what I'm saying? Like, replaying part 1 seems a little ridiculous when I've still never even played the new games at all. Like, but I mean, retro is retro, right? Crash Bandicoot 2. Yes, Crash Bandicoot 2. This was Cortex Strikes Back. This is the one I liked. Like, and of course, originally there were only like 3 of them. I liked the first one, okay. I love the second one, and just recently beat it again, not way too long ago. It was about a year ago. I actually went back to this and played the whole thing all the way through. And part 3 I like, but part 2, that was my sweet spot. I love the second Crash game. I've yet to play the 4th. I did buy the remaster for the Switch, and then started playing part 1 again, and then started dying a lot. And then skipped part 1 and went to part 2 and beat the entire game 100%. And I think I'm currently on part 3 for it. And I like it for what it's worth. And it sure is cool to see games like this remastered in a way that they look so new, but still are exactly what I remember them being. That, to me, is perfect remastery. I don't need you to change it. I would just like to enjoy it as if it was the first time I'd ever seen it all over again. And that's a tricky spot to hit with remasters. But I know it can be done because, yeah. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. This is the best Castlevania game ever made. And if you disagree, you're wrong. Period. You're wrong. I played this game like it was the only game I owned. And I'm serious about that. I memorized every single block of the castle map. I could run the game in a single sit down from start to finish and beat the game. I was good at it, and I knew it. In fact, not way too long ago, my nephew got it for the Xbox, for his Xbox. He got it on his marketplace. And I walked in the room and he was like, "Oh yeah, I just started this. This is a cool Castlevania." And he was like, "Isn't this the one you like?" And I was like, "This is beyond the one I like." I was like, "Kid, I'm so good at this game, it would bring you to tears." And he's like, "Well, play it, man." And I beat the game. I beat the game right there I just sat up there for like 4 or 5 hours and just played through I beat it. Like, I know exactly where to go, what to get, how fast to get there. This game was my game. In fact, I got so good at this game, and my friends did too. I had 2 friends that played this game all the time with me, and they got really good at it. So we started writing challenges for one another. You have to beat the whole game wearing nothing. You can only use the ice equipment. He got his tough man challenge was beat the whole game using magic. Only magic. You could not use weapons, could not use armor. The only exception was you had to do things like you have to use armor only in a spot where you have to use it, or you have to put the 2 rings on in order to get into the room. If you have to do that, you could put those on, activate the area, take them off. You're not allowed to use them. He beat the game with only magic. So they gave me the hardest one they could think of. No armor, no weapons. Whole game. Punching. And I beat that game. Furious. A real pain. I died more times than I could count, but I beat that game. And I'll never forget this. But when I got to Dracula, when I got to the end Dracula, the actual ending of the game, I walk in and it starts going through the things. It starts going through the story and everything. And I remember couple of the guys that were there with me, my friend that played all the time, and then 2 other people that were over playing pool. I'm sitting there playing, and everybody's like, "You're not going to beat him. He's hard when you're allowed to fight." And I said, I'll beat him. I'll beat him. I don't know how many tries this is going to take, but I'll beat him. Let the whole spiel go through and everything. Dracula comes down. "Now behold my true form," and he comes down on the thing, "and despair." And when he does that, he comes down, and to this day, I don't know what happened. It was some sort of glitch. It was something that I triggered. I don't know what it was. I really don't. But I had witnesses to this. I punched him 1 time. Pop! And all of a sudden, the game, loaded. And you could hear it spin in the tray. Then, all of a sudden, it went to the voice dialogue. Oh, how is it that I have been so defeated?" I dropped the controller, stood up, and Sub-Zero in the air right here. And everyone in the room was like, "No, that doesn't count. Something weird just happened. That doesn't count." And I was like, "It counts. Those are credits. It counts. I beat him. I beat him in 1 punch." I still, to this day, don't know what happened, what I triggered, why it went down that way. I don't understand it, and I've never been able to make it repeat no matter how many times I've done it. But I had people in the room that saw me do it. I punched him once. Dink! And the game froze. and then all of a sudden the tray, like you could hear it spin. Played the end of the game. I beat him. One punch. I don't know how. To this day, I don't know what happened. Some sort of 1 in a million glitch or something, because I could never get it to happen again. The next time I went in there, I thought that I'd figured something out. Like, you know, if you go in there and you have no weapons, it like glitches the game and you beat him. Well, I punched him that time and he just hit me back. So I don't know what happened. But then on top of that, this game also, I had to take a picture and I sent it into a video game magazine. I got over 200% map completion. It was like 211. I was like 211%. And I remember being like, is that a glitch? I don't understand. How can I do more than there is on the map? And I sent that in. And then later on, I think I remember reading something about it where like, I think total map completion is like, I think it's 211 or 214%. So, but yeah, I remember that blew me away. I played that game like you cannot believe. That was my game. Of course it's not leaving the shelf. Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter. It ain't going nowhere. I did already talk about this. Capcom was just the master of pumping out fighting games at this time. It felt like they could do no wrong. And this system right here, leading us into things like Marvel vs. Capcom, this was magnificent. And still today holds up as one of the absolute premier fighting games that I've ever played in my entire life. This is what 2D fighting was about, man. I don't know many games that I can reference in this time or even after that I would consider above the level that these games created at the time. I really don't. I know we've seen a lot of things like Guilty Gear and BlazBlue and even the Persona fighting games and whatnot that have really stepped it up a notch and done some fantastic work. I'm not putting them down at all, but I'm saying that like this right here was and is pretty much still an absolute peak masterpiece fighting game. So it ain't leaving the shelf for nothing. Breath of Fire 4. I used to have Breath of Fire 3. But I was living with a roommate who for a while, he was having some money problems. He never said anything about those money problems. He just had them. And because he was living with me, he was able to systematically find out what games I was playing and what games I wasn't playing. And he began stripping my game shelves for games that I wouldn't notice were gone until well after they were gone. So I no longer have Breath of Fire 3. But I have Breath of Fire 4. And Breath of Fire 3 and 4 sit at this weird paradox where these two games are pretty much the best in the series. Some lean towards 3, some lean towards 4. And it's hard to argue one over the other because both of these were the absolute pinnacle of the series. So I still have one of them. And who knows, maybe someday they will release a collection, like Pixel Remaster for Final Fantasy. That was solid. You got Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, all remastered. And as far as I'm concerned, on a personal level, the best versions of those games. I enjoyed Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4 more than I have in years playing through the Pixel Remaster. Part 5, I'm not a big fan of Part 5, so I didn't necessarily love it, but I don't necessarily love it to begin with. But this is awesome. I can't sell enough just how good these games were. And 3 and 4 hit the absolute sweet spot of the series. I honestly believe that if you released a 3-4 remake, not remake, sorry, a 3-4 remaster, like put 3 and 4 in the same thing, like a disc, like a collection, and release it again, I think it would sell like crazy. Like, I don't see any reason that it wouldn't. And I can't remember for sure, but I thought there was a game that did that not way too long ago, where it was like a series. And, oh, you know what? Didn't they do... Dragon Ball Z had something like that. Didn't they re-release Dragon Ball Z Budokai 1 and 3, but they skipped on 2? So it's not like it's outlandish to see these video game collections do something like that. I would love to see a Breath of Fire series release. Like, bam, here you go. Here's the first 4 games right there. That would be sick. But I don't know what the actual chances of that are. But if they would look, if we're getting Sudekin 1 and 2 remaster, like, it seems like games from my generation are getting high-class remasters with quality of life features and everything for a new generation to experience, as well as an old generation to go back to. Guys, the Dragon Quest 2.5D games, oh yeah. Like, we're in the moment for people my age to replay their childhoods better than they did in their childhoods. So, like, what's going on with Breath of Fire? Where is it? Armored Core, Master of the Arena, or Master of Arena. I'm sorry, I put a "the" in there. I'm so sorry. I apologize. So sorry. This game was hard, but really cool. I have beat it. I got all the way to the very end of it, and I did beat it. What was his name? Ninebreaker or something like that? I remember the end of the game. I have beat this. I beat this multiple times. But the coolest thing about this game when I was growing up was that you could take fights both normally, where you would go through the actual campaign, and then you could fight in a type of arena. And then it was another disc where you could make an arena. You could even set the AI for like how it fought. Did it shoot excessively? Did it try to get behind you? Was it like how you wanted to go? And I remember me and my buddy at the time, Gundam Wing was a big deal. And we made an arena for Gundam Wing. Like, literally for Gundam Wing. We just pieced it out the best we could. We were like, these parts look most like Wing. And then, you know, we had to get the weapons on them that we wanted. So sometimes we'd have to kind of like make an exception. Like, these legs don't necessarily look right, but if we use these legs, he has the gun. So, like, we made all of them. And then we put them on the roster and we made our own arena to play through. That was awesome. That was a different time, man. We spent so much time making each unit. We made each unit, and then we built them up, made them look as much like the Gundam Wing pilots as we possibly could, all their mechs. Then we sat there and we did color piece by piece by piece, getting it as perfect as we possibly could. And then after we basically made our own game, we played through it and like found the areas where we were like, this guy, the way he's fighting is just ridiculous, or this or that, and kept on going in and like, let's adjust the AI. We want it to be this level of hard. It needs to be hard so he can beat us, but not like so that the game is actively cheating you and things like that. We go in and tweak little things. This game we put a lot of time into. It kind of makes me wonder what happened, because I don't play Armored Core at all now. And I realize it's not exactly the same game it used to be, but like, I mean, I don't play it at all. I don't go back to the old games, and I have zero interest in the new games. I'm curious when it was I dropped off and stopped playing them. I really am. Because I have 4 or 5 of them on the shelf, and I've beat all of them. but I can't think of a moment that like triggered me and made me leave the series. So I wonder, I honestly do, at what point did I stop liking Armored Core? And I can't come up with it. Did I just find interest in other things? Miss out on a couple Armored Cores and then never go back? I don't know. And I honestly can't remember. Interesting. Final Fantasy VIII. I don't like the magic system. I don't like the story. Every now and then, I go back to it and I play it. It does happen. And I almost always come back to the exact same inevitable conclusion. I don't like Final Fantasy VIII. I don't really care for the junction system. I don't like that magic makes up a big portion of your stats, especially since when I play Final Fantasies, I like to use magic, and using magic will drop my stats. I don't like that. I don't like that the game levels up with you. I don't like how the experience works. I don't like that you get paid like an actual job. That you know what I mean? Like, I don't like that. I don't like collecting and hunting the monsters for very specific parts to then go to the store to have a magazine to like make a weapon. I don't like that. I don't necessarily love the characters. When we did, on Fandom Night, we did the Final Fantasy Legacy. I was not singing praises of Final Fantasy VIII. At all. And I did try to go back to 8 when they released that version on the Switch. So I've even tried this recently. I don't like Final Fantasy VIII. Never have. I probably never will. Call me a shill or whatever you want. I like Final Fantasy VII. This is my speed. I like the materia. I like the characters. I like the steampunk world. I like the end-of-world scenario that just seems way cooler to me than sleeping sorceress in time and space. But I don't like it. I don't like everybody has amnesia. But like one guy doesn't have amnesia, but he doesn't tell the other guys that he doesn't have amnesia because of using guardian figures. But then like if that's actually a thing, then how come we're using the guardian figures in the game and nobody's like actively losing memories during the game, including the guy who says I don't use guardian figures? That's the reason that, you know, my memory was not actually affected. But that's also not true because I am actively equipping GFs on him in the game. I hate that game. I don't like it. It is not my speed. I'm a Final Fantasy VII person through and through. Tifa over Rinoa all day long. Cloud over Squall all day long. All day long. And nobody's going to change my mind about that. 7 goes on the shelf. Absolutely. This is one of those games that I've held on to for a really long time because, like, it's Final Fantasy VIII. I am going to keep it on the shelf, which seems like I'm breaking my rule, but I'm not. See, where Final Fantasy Tactics is going to leave the shelf because I have seen no redeeming value in it for me at all. Final Fantasy VIII, I will at least sit down, play the card game, and like play alongside the Lone Paladin while he shows me how to break the game and do dumb shit with it. And that, at the very least, I will enjoy. And in the long run, games are supposed to be played for enjoyment. And there is still enjoyment to be found in that Final Fantasy through my buddy. So there's that, at the very least. Otherwise, it's definitely not a thing for me. Okay, so Final Fantasy 6 and 5 and 4 and Chrono Trigger all stay on the shelf. For what it's worth, Final Fantasy 4 I find to be an absolute fantastic Final Fantasy experience. And personally, just like I've made the argument for a couple of other games, Final Fantasy 4 is when Final Fantasy becomes Final Fantasy. I believe that. I believe that most game franchises have a perfect point where they hit it off, and this is what the games are going to be from this moment forward. And I think Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3, they're fine games. They're fine. I don't hate any of them. I really don't. But 4 is when Final Fantasy becomes Final Fantasy. Everything that I know about Final Fantasy moving forward starts here, personally. Chrono Trigger is one of the greatest RPGs ever made, so, of course it's going to stay on the shelf. And with all the CG movies and everything that they added to these are a really cool experience. And the bestiaries and, the artwork and everything. Final Fantasy V, I'm not a huge fan of Final Fantasy V. I'm not. I don't detest it, but it's one of those games that, I play for so long and then, it starts to kind of grind on me. I never really stick to it. There's certain things that I love about it. Maybe the pacing is bad. I'm not 100% sure, because I always find myself... I had to force myself to beat that game. And then over time, even on the Pixel Remaster... On the Pixel Remaster, I played 1, 2, 3, and 4 all the way through back to back. Started 5, got to the part where the thing went up in the sky, and I was fighting the cannons in the sky. Lost one fight, and it was by chance too. It wasn't anything serious, but I lost that one fight. Turned it off and said, well, I'll play it later. Then didn't play it for a very, 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 very long time. Then I think my buddy the Lone Paladin came over. He turned it on and was like, where are you? And I was like, I'm right here fighting these cannons. Went up, beat the cannons, no problem whatsoever. Then played a bunch more of the game. Don't remember beating it. And I'm in absolutely no rush to do so. In fact, I've already deleted it. It was on my computer because I bought the Pixel Collection on the computer, on the PC. And I've already deleted it because I'd just rather play 6. I don't know what it is. I have no desire for 5. But Final Fantasy VI, even today, is still my favorite Final Fantasy that has ever existed. I don't think they have ever done better than 6, personally. It is my absolute favorite, knockdown, drag out, no BS, best Final Fantasy in my opinion. I love 7. I like 10. I like a lot of Final Fantasies. I really do. There's only a couple of them that I don't necessarily like. And even then, I don't hate them. They're just definitely not at the top of my list. But 6? 6 is one of those games that if you said, your house is burning down, you can save as many games as you can fit in your big grubby hands, but you can only grab 5 games. What are you saving? 6 is amongst those. In fact, 6 may be the game that I save. The game. It's my favorite. Dino Crisis 3. I got Dino Crisis 3 and Resident Evil 3 at the same time. They were a Christmas gift from my mom. And I remember I chose to play this first. And it was very different. First off, from Resident Evil, I remember I liked the fact that you could actually like aim the gun and walk with it. So you could like shoot while moving. I thought that was cool. But then I remember feeling really strange about that you couldn't do it in Part 3. These games like came out at the same time. I got them at the same time. They were done by the same company. But I mean, I know different teams worked on them. It just shocked me that was like the way that it was. Because like one game you could walk and shoot, the other game you couldn't walk and shoot. One game you could dodge, but you couldn't dodge function in the other game. One game you could make your own like medicine and bullets and stuff like that. The other game you could make your own medicines and bullets and stuff like that. So why, I remember that kind of blowing my mind. Why did they copy certain aspects and use them in both games, but then not use them in both games? I remember that kind of blew me away. I really liked Regina. I thought she was cool. Like, I legit liked her. I do have a little bit of a thing for redheads in terms of, I mean, yeah, I like redheads in general, but I like redheads and their fiery personality idea that I get from different shows. Like, I liked April. I like the young April that's in the 2013 Turtles as well. I really like her character. I like Jean Grey. I like Red Sonja. These are just characters that are like drawn to me naturally, and I think it does have a lot to do with the hair color and the personality traits that often come along with it. They kind of signify a certain kind of character, and I like them a lot, and I get a little bit of defensive in terms of those characters. I liked Teela. I still do. That's my favorite Motu character that there is. Teela is fantastic. So I think that's the reason I kind of get a little bit defensive sometimes when I see that they take the redheads out of shows and like replace them. That always bothers me a little bit because those tend to be my favorite characters. Well, Regina, I liked in this game. And in some ways, I remember wondering, when I was playing this, I remember wondering if Dino Crisis and Resident Evil were taking place at the same time. There's no indication that they couldn't be, especially with companies that are currently doing biological warfare. You're telling me dinosaurs wouldn't play into that somehow? Especially monster dinosaurs, which is very much what the idea was, because now we know dinosaurs for what they are, and we know things like Jurassic Park. He wasn't creating dinosaurs. He was creating genetically mutated monster animals that people thought they wanted to see. They weren't actual dinosaurs in the way that they are scientifically, which is interesting in its own right and kind of added a whole new life to the Jurassic Park idea. Not that I necessarily love all Jurassic Park movies, but you get the idea. And then I remembered wondering if we could have seen characters like this cross over. Like, it would have been cool to get Regina in some of the other games and vice versa. In fact, I've often been surprised that when they do things like Mercenaries or the raid mode for Resident Evil Revelations 2, why were there not... That was like prime crossover real estate. Like, how come Sheva Alamo wasn't in that? Like, how come you didn't go to some of your other properties and bring in people that made sense? Wouldn't that have been the chance to get Regina in on one of those games? Sure, you're not fighting dinosaurs, but it still would have made sense. I don't know. A little bit of a fan thing there. I just would have loved to have seen this character run further distance than she actually got to do. Because she got like 2 games and then... bye. And I think one of the things that hit me with her was I almost instantly started getting that Tomb Raider vibe. Like, I like Tomb Raider, and I really loved Laura. And then Laura developed into this much bigger thing that I liked even more. And we already talked about that. But I felt like Regina was on track for that when I first played that first game. And then I played the second game, And I was like, I'm starting to like this. I'm starting to like where we're going. I won't say that both games are perfect quality by any means, but I liked the character. And I would have loved to have seen her continue, even if she had to have continued outside of her series. And I really think a way to save a character like her, and some of the other characters for that matter, would be to claim that they happened at the same time. But while everybody's dealing with zombies over here, or mutants over here, nobody's necessarily paying attention to dinosaurs over here. And it happened on an island anyway. I also got a feeling from Regina when I played the game that, like, her team was like Metal Gear Solid. That's what I felt. Like they felt like Solid Snake kind of characters. And so I just wish they would have done more. But that's it. That's every single video game in my PlayStation library. That is every single PlayStation 1 game that I own, reviewed and talked about at tedium. Video after video after video after video. I'm going to do another one of these at some point. Just kind of going down that shelf. So we'll probably be on PlayStation 4 next just because of the layout. But that's it. So I'm going to go back to just talking a bunch of random stuff and whatnot for a while before I set up for the next one. And of course, all of these videos will be a collab on YouTube as one big giant mega video. Kind of like more of like a podcast talk. Guess I'm signing out.
I have spoken. Take what you will from it.